You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It is season number 3. It is episode 58. What happens to the Cubs in the second half? Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on the socials. Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, Fly the W on Facebook. Email us at flythew670@gmail.com. Crawly, before we get going, we had a great live show. Probably 50 to 70 fans of the Mully and Haw show were there in our Blue Cross Blue Shield Performance Studio. And your guy, the Salsa King, was there. And I told him, I got a picture with him, and I told him that I would be repping the shirt again on the podcast. So I just wanted to make sure I was a man of my word. Salsa King of Chicago. You find the product out at the Jewels, and he's a good dude, and glad to finally meet him in person. You know him.
Yep, and you can go to Jewels, you can go to Mariano's, you can go to Fresh Time. It's pretty much at any single location, most locations that you can go to. But best salsa, it's as fresh as it can taste. And for me, the queso dip, absolutely out of this world.
And I haven't seen the queso dip. Do they have? That's at the Jewels. I have not seen that at the.
That is at the Jewels, and all I can tell you is the second it's in my house, it's gone in probably about 30 minutes. It's one of those things that's
now really... okay. Now this will be a stupid question. We're off on a tangent, but that's okay because it's our podcast. Because my kids love queso as well. So is it by the Fresh Salsa?
I've always seen it by the salsa when I get it. It's always by the salsa. And here's a tip for all our listeners. Get the Jewels chips. Like the Jewels, I don't know what it is about them, but you put those Jewels chips with either the salsa or the queso, man. It's just phenomenal.
Now I'm going to have, after this pot, I might have to go back and look for the queso because I have not seen the queso.
If not, like I said, it's one of those things that's addicting. And a few times we've been in Club 400 Chicago down in the city, and all of it, we always are stocked with the Salsa King products. And you come home after a game, after a few beers, and you're gonna kill that tub of queso in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. All right. So Crawly, we're getting ready for the second half, but before we do that, let's go over with everybody the first half. Not exactly what we want to do, but it's part of what we do here. So let's review the first half. It's really not the half, right? It's the part of the season before the All-Star game. It's not right in the middle by any.
It's like about 65% of the season is done now. So as we look at this right here, the Cubs finished the first half with a record of 47-51, last in the NL Central. And Dustin, when this season started, we didn't know where it was going to be. But it started out actually pretty good for the Cubs. In March and April, they were 18-12. You'll take that any day of the week. And the weird thing is they hit with runners in scoring position. And the worst part of the team was the starting pitching that first month.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, when the calendar flips into May, right after that series with the Brewers, the hitting just completely disappeared. The starting pitching got better, and the bullpen went to crap. And so in May, they're 10-18, and in June, they're 11-16. So that's 13 games under 500 for the month of May and June. And then they went on a little run in July, went 7-5. But when you look at the team, you look at how they are at home. They're 25-21 at home. Not good enough. If you want to be a playoff team, you really got to be 10 games over 500 at home, and you got to be at 500 on the road. They're 9 games under 500 on the road, 21-30. And then remember, they went on that long streak where they couldn't win a series opener. They're 13-18 in series openers. In rubber matches, they're 7-9. Home series, they're 7-1. Thank you for those stupid 2 and 4 game series. And on road series, they're 4-10-1. Dustin, though, I think one of the big things, biggest stories of the first half was injuries. It can't be an excuse. But Dustin, it's got to be hard for any team to overcome all the injuries the Cubs suffered in the first half, right?
No doubt.
Before the season starts, the Cubs had 3 players on the IL. So they put 3 officially on the IL before it starts. Jamison Tyone, Caleb Killian, and Patrick Wisdom. And then their ace, Justin Steele, injured his hamstring on opening night. I was there at Texas. And then since that moment, here's a list of the Cubs that have spent time on the IL. In April, Ben Brown, neck. Julian Merriweather, shoulder strain, 60-day IL. Seiya Suzuki, oblique. Drew Smiley, right hip. Kyle Hendricks, lower back. Cody Bellinger, rib fracture. Jordan Wicks, left forearm strain. That takes us into May. Daniel Palencia, right shoulder strain. Dansby Swanson, right knee strain. Yency Almonte, shoulder strain that put him on the 60-day IL. Adbert Alzolay, right forearm strain that put him on the 60-day IL. Keegan Thompson, viral illness. Colton Brewer, lower back strain. Then we get to June, Jordan Wicks, right oblique strain, Mike Talkman, left groin strain, Mark Leiter, right forearm strain, Javier Assad, right forearm strain, Keegan Thompson, right rib fracture. Then we get into July, Colton Brewer punched a wall, left hand fracture. Cody Bellinger hit with a pitch on his middle finger, and he's got that fractured. And then Luke Little with a shoulder strain. And again, I'm not really sure if we know exactly the severity yet. I'm sure we'll hear about it when the press gets to talk to Craig Counsell tomorrow. But Dustin, from the pitching staff, only Shota Imanaga and Hector Neris have not been on the IL.
Yeah, that is pretty wild. I guess, everybody deals with it. And I guess that's why you've got to, do well in the draft. You've got to have a good farm system so that you can try to overcome these types of injuries.
It would have to be an incredible team, someone like the Dodgers that has a deep farm system and a lot of players and a deep bench to be able to overcome all of that. I think the bullpen, especially, again, losing Merriweather, losing Alzolay, guys you expected to contribute, Leiter being out. I mean, that really affects teams. But,
yeah,
Dustin, when we look at the first half, right, and we talk about the starting pitching, this is what blows my mind. If you look at this about the starters here, the Cubs' top 4 starters, this is from Chris Emma, 670, right? Justin Steele, 2.71 ERA, Shota Imanaga, 2.97 ERA, Jamison Tyone, 3.10 ERA, and Javier Assad, 3.27 ERA. If I told you that those were going to be the Cubs starters ERA before the season started, where would you think they'd be right now in the standings?
2 games ahead of the Brewers.
I mean,
right? 2 games ahead of everybody in the Central.
I mean, that's just phenomenal when you think about it. That's it. But even though they've been great, everything else has been a struggle. We've talked about
everything else has been a struggle, right? And nothing. And the other thing, Crawly, is nothing has seemed to work at the same time. When one thing is actually working, something else falls apart, and then something else is just kind of So it's been very rare that all 3 aspects of what you need to do have happened at the same time. Very rare.
Right. We mainly saw it that last week before the All-Star break, and that was what we were hoping to see. The starting pitching has been great. Everything else, like we said, a struggle. They've played 34 one-run games, Dustin. 34, and they are 14-20 in those situations. I mean, even just a little bit better, and you got a wild card. You got a playoff spot, right?
Right. So what that means is that Adbert Alzolay has completely let himself down, his teammates down, and most importantly, in this case, Jed Hoyer down, because obviously Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins believed that he could do kind of what he did last year. And then they had Hector Neris in reserve, and Hector Neris hasn't been able to do what he used to do. And then you lost a couple of other key bullpen pieces, so they weren't around. So everybody had to step up a level, and they just haven't been able to do it. I mean, you're right. If you had an actual legitimate closer, you would be at least, worst case scenario, a wild card team right now. And we would be talking about what we wanted the Cubs to be buying instead of, I think everybody would agree the Cubs are not sellers, depending on who you talk about. You and I had a off the podcast conversation about some maybe clickbait out there right now. But maybe they're soft buyers at this moment, but they're not going to be, I don't think they're going to be all in, and I don't think they're going to be all out.
Well, the bullpen right now, Dustin, is tied for 3rd in blown saves this season with 18 in 40 opportunities. So that's a save percentage of 55%. Not only that, the defense was the thing that really, again, I can sit there and say, look, I'm not going to blame anybody for the bullpen. It was just when you lose everybody, when everybody gets injured, there's not much you can do. But the defense, Dustin, the defense was the thing. It started out bad for Dansby Swanson, and Nico started out bad. You've seen Seiya Suzuki making errors out there. The defense has improved in the last few weeks. But, Dustin, I went back and looked, and I'm not going to – there's 2 newcomers in the infield, right? To me, Michael Busch and his defense has improved significantly since the start of the season. When I saw him in April, I'm saying to myself, oh, God, this guy cannot play first base. And slowly but surely, he has looked like he has improved a lot. But to me, that Christopher Morel experimented 3rd, and I remember Craig Counsell talking about that at Cub Convention, how much he wanted to see him there. I am not too sure that's how much longer that's going to continue. Morel played 3rd base almost every game, Dustin, in April, May, and June. He was given every opportunity, right? I went back and looked at the Cubs winning streak that, when they started that on July 4th, if you remember, Ian Happ was with the fireworks. He was hitting home runs against the Phillies. They followed that up with a 3-game sweep against the Orioles, right? So now they have they had a 4-game winning streak, 4 in a row, and then they split the Cardinals series. And so they ended that road trip. What was it? It was 5-2, right? 7-game road trip. They finished it 5-2 plus that game against the Phillies. But in those 11 games, right, when you had the 7 game, how many starts did Christopher Morel have at third?
2?
1.
Okay.
One start. It was a Shota Imanaga start against Baltimore, the second game of that series, and that was it. He came in the Cardinals doubleheader when they started pulling guys out, and then they moved him over to third. He didn't start at third. And so I have a feeling that Craig Counsell and maybe, I don't know if it's Jed Hoyer, but I think they've kind of seen enough.
Well, I'll tell you what. Here's one thing I know for sure. When Justin Steele starts, Miles Mastrobuoni is going to be his third baseman. That I guarantee you.
Absolutely, and Miles got the
personal third baseman now. Mm-hmm.
And David Bodie got a few, Patrick Wisdom got 1 or 2, but again, Christopher Morel, who again 3 months of being the everyday third baseman, now you see him looking like an everyday.
But you have to keep his
DH.
bat in the lineup. He can be the DH. That's fine. Let him DH. He's not too young. That whole thing. Like, they got to keep him interested. Forget it. It's okay. Let's have him DH because you can't trust him in the field. That we know for sure.
Now, Dustin, you brought up the fact that are the Cubs buyers, sellers, stand pat. I brought up the fact that I think, they got a couple guys coming back that I think are going to be almost the equivalent of getting a good trade piece, right? I don't think they're in any position to trade. I don't think they're going to get a lot of bang for their buck, if you want my opinion on that. But the Cubs are 3.5 games out of the third wild card spot, right? Mm-hmm. But the trouble is they haven't been playing good against the teams that are ahead of them. Right. Among the other teams in the wild card mix, the Giants, the Padres, the Braves, and the Mets, all ahead of the Cubs, have the season tiebreaker versus the Cubs. So if they tied at the end of the season, Padres, Giants, Braves, Mets would get in just on virtue of tiebreaker. Now you have these games remaining left. The Cubs are 2-5 against Cincinnati with 6 games left. So, I mean, you really can't lose any games against Cincinnati. You don't have a lot of margin for error there, right? You got 3 in Cincy, and then the 3 last games of the season are at home against Cincinnati. St. Louis, they're 3-6. You have 4 games left. You have to win all 4 of those. Arizona, the first team we're going to see out of
first team you play, right? So that series becomes exceptionally important.
Right. The Cubs have the advantage there, 2-1 with 3 left to play. So you got to win this series. Pittsburgh 3-4. There's 6 games left, so plenty of time to get ahead of Pittsburgh. And they haven't played Washington. They have 6 games left. So, with Washington, Pittsburgh, and Arizona, they easily can control their destiny and take that. But against St. Louis, Cincy, that's going to be really hard, I think.
All right, very good.
Now, one more thing here, really quick. Strength of schedule.
Yep.
That is working for the Cubs.
Yes,
right?
I read that they are about to have one of, if not the easiest schedules down the stretch.
It's the 10th easiest schedule down the stretch. The average win percentage is .493. So under 500 is what the compiled average is for their opponents. Now they got the Phillies the last week of the season. So I'm hoping the Phillies obviously are going to be in it. Maybe they rest guys. Maybe they don't start all their starters. Who knows? You got the Guardians, Yankees, Dodgers, Twins, and after this Diamondback series, the Brewers. So coming out of the gate with Arizona and the Brewers is going to be huge. They also, Dustin, have to play better against bad teams, and they're going to be facing the White Sox, the Marlins, the Rockies, the A's, the Nationals, the Blue Jays if they decide to sell. I mean, that's all going to be pretty.
Well, no more White Sox. I hate to. They're done with the White Sox. There's no more game. There's no more games against the White Sox.
Don't they play at US Cellular still?
No, I thought they did that already. Didn't they?
I don't think so.
We'll double check that. I don't mean to call you out, but I thought they've already played 2-2.
So if we take a look at FanGraphs right here, what we're looking at right here with the Cubs is they have roughly about a 13% chance to make the playoffs. Now, guys, remember last year, Dustin, in September, where that first week, the Cubs had a 90% chance to make playoffs. things can turn around, but they just need a lot of things to go right for them to really have that playoff spot that we were expecting.
All right, Crawly, I misspoke. Saturday, August 10th. This is the weird one. The Cubs are going to have a Sunday off. They're gonna play Friday, August 9th, and Saturday, August 10th, both night games, and they are going to have Sunday, the 11th, off. A Sunday off day for Cubs. No Chicago baseball on a Sunday in the summer. That is dumb.
Absolutely.
Dumb. I mean, give them Friday off, right? If you were going to pick Friday or Sunday, give them Friday off. That doesn't make, I mean, again, we'll get into the schedules. The schedules are out. We'll get into the schedules because they have, and maybe this will be good. They have the Thursday off too. They have Thursday, the 8th off, and then they have Sunday, the 11th off. That is just dumb. And you know what else is dumb while we're talking about the White Sox really quick and scheduling? Any idea? I know you know who the Cubs are playing first, and we're going to get into that in a minute. Any idea who the White Sox are playing first?
No, who are the White Sox playing?
Take a guess. I'm saying it's dumb. It's about the dumbest thing you've ever heard. And opening day at 35th and Shields is on March 27th, the earliest opening day in the history. Okay, who do you think they're hosting?
Milwaukee?
Even worse. One more guess, and then I'll give it to everybody.
St. Louis.
The Anaheim Angels. The Angels are coming from California on March 27th to play at 35th and Shields against the White Sox. Dumb. Dumb.
I would say that would be one of my dream guesses to have an MLB schedule maker. I would love to sit there and just drill them.
I'm sure it's a nightmare. I'm sure it's a nightmare. I get it. There's concerts. There's all kinds of. There's soccer matches. There's exhibitions. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I get it. But why in the world would a warm weather team go to a cold weather team that's not domed in March? I mean, listen, the Brewers was a good guess. I mean, why would the Brewers not open up at home in the crappy weather potentially? I mean, come on. It's dumb.
It doesn't matter though. White Sox, Brewers, everything. The Cubs have their work come out to them, man. They got to get it going, and like I said, it's got to be. They got to play like they did that last week of the season before the break, and continue that, and hopefully do what they did last season, but this time to finish the job.
You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It's episode 58 of season number 3. What happens to the Cubs in the second half? That's what we are asking here in this segment. Crawly talks to Josh Frydman, WGN Sports, to talk about the All-Star game, which was down in Texas, and what experience was like for the Cubs' lone All-Star. That, of course, was Shota Imanaga.
Joining us on the Fly the W podcast, you recognize him from WGN Sports, our old friend Josh Frydman. Josh, we were talking, we don't have you in the airport this year. We got you in the studios, huh?
Yeah, this is an annual occurrence, All-Star Week, and the last two I've been in the LAX airport and the Seattle airport. So yeah, I was joking. I didn't hear from you at the airport yesterday, so we must not do it this year, but you hit me up, and always happy to do the pod. And yeah, a little better audio booth here at WGN. Much cleaner audio than reporting, boarding at gate 5 in 10 minutes for the flight to Las Vegas or something crazy like that. So happy to be back on, and yeah, hopefully a little better audio for the folks listening.
Now, for you, like you said, this is the third All-Star game that you've been to, and I went to Texas. I went to Arlington for opening day this year, but I know they were very excited about the All-Star festivities. How do you think it went for hosting at Globe Life Stadium?
Yeah, and I was there too for my first trip to Globe Life in March for the Cubs opener that you were with as well in Texas. So yeah, I think they did a pretty good job overall. My impressions of the stadium back in March were that it's very spacious, a little on the sterile side. I mean, there's not like anything that really stands out to me, of which is interesting about a stadium built in 2019, 2020 when it debuted. So for really one of the newest stadiums in all of baseball, there wasn't anything that really like kind of grabs you or like, wow, this is super unique. I got to get back here. So I'd probably put the stadium itself, maybe the middle, maybe the last third of the stadiums in MLB. But that said, they did a good job. Most of the events were inside because it was about 100, 101 degrees. The red carpet event that they always have the Tuesday of the All-Star game was very hot. That was the only event that I was definitely schwitzing and having a tough time drinking as much water as possible because I still felt dehydrated. Took that picture of Clark the Cub, who I did not know is now a 3-time mascot home run derby champion. He's holding up the belt there, as you saw. Some of the mascots were also wearing cowboy boots and hats. They were getting into the spirit. Some of the players as well with their wardrobes. So that was fun. So yeah, overall, of the 3 I've covered, I think Seattle was spectacular last year. It was my first trip to Seattle. The weather was perfect. That added to, I think, the environment. LA, with Dodger Stadium, obviously very special to have it at Dodger Stadium, and that was really cool. So of the 3, this was probably the 3rd ranking, but by no means was it bad for any reason. It was just probably not as unique of an experience as the last 2 I've been to, and of course we had fewer local players there too. Just 1 Cub and 1 White Sox for us to cover.
Yeah, and there's so much that goes on during the All-Star festivities. But there was a lot of press here, and these are all pictures I took from your Twitter account, Josh_Frydman, on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, the site formerly known as Twitter, whatever. But how did it seem Shota was doing as far as interacting with other players and interacting with the international media that attended Arlington?
Yeah, so as you know, all the elite Japanese players, they are swarmed by media. There are so many Japanese media here stateside to cover not only Shota, obviously Shohei Ohtani, Yu Darvish when he was here, and obviously now in San Diego. So those guys get a lot of press. And number 1 by far, media-wise, was Shohei Ohtani. But number 2 was probably Shota Imanaga, because all those Japanese media were here to see both players who, of course, know each other very well. We're teammates for the WBC Japanese team that won the championship with Shota pitching the final game against the U.S. So they have a good relationship, and I thought he handled himself great. He has shown the personality for the entire year. We've gotten to know him dating back to the Cubs convention. You were there. I was there at that introductory press conference when he's singing "Go Cubs Go," and you're like, wow, this guy, has this great personality that I don't think anybody really knew about or expected. And why should we? So that's been really good. His translator, Edwin Stanberry, does a very good job relaying the message that Shota has. Sometimes, and I've worked a number of years in clubhouses where there's a translator that maybe doesn't always, I would say, get the message across properly. If we ask a question, sometimes it's more of a summation or a paraphrase of the answer. And I'm not fluent by any means in Japanese, but sometimes this happens in Spanish and other languages. So you just rely, obviously, on the translator to do the best they can. But you really, when you talk to Shota, you see him internalizing the question, take a moment, pausing, thinking about it, and then Edwin as well, going slow, relaying the answer, and you get the essence of Shota through that. One of the highlights, I think, of the entire trip for me was during the press conference that all the media do on Monday with the players. I asked Shota, look, back in May, you made headlines by saying that the most surprising thing for you about being in the U.S. was turning right on red, which is hilarious that would be the most surprising thing. So I'm like, has anything else caught you off guard and surprised you? And he literally got asked the question from Edwin. They both laugh, they chuckle. So I'm like, okay, this is good. And then after Shota answers, Edwin says, thank you for the question. I knew this was going to be asked, so I have a response ready. And he says the story about how in Japan, when you take a shower, there's, I guess, a button on either the shower head or the water temperature that you can program it to the exact temperature you want. So if you want a hot temperature, 99 degrees, whatever, boom, press the button, dial it, 99, you're good to go. And in America, of course, we don't have, at least I don't know anybody that has that technology. So you're always fiddling with the left and the right, the cold and the hot, and trying to get it perfect. So Shota was like, that's really annoying. I don't know how to do that. And I always tend to take a lukewarm shower. And it was such an unexpected response that I loved it. And that's the color that you like from these guys, because yeah, you can talk to them about their seasons and what it's like to be an all-star, and they're going to give good responses, but it's usually kind of generic. So this was really fun to get that color and that personality from Shota.
Maybe we got to try it out. I'm trying to see if I can get a trip over to Japan for opening week next week. Next year when the Cubs are in Japan, maybe try those showers out, right?
That would be a very fun trip. And yeah, maybe Shota will give us access to the. This sounds bad, but access to the showers, but not in the shower. See how it works fully clothed.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, Shota came in. I think he was the only NL pitcher to pitch a clean 1-2-3 inning. And, it's just, I know not everybody likes the All-Star game, but when you see those guys playing defense behind them, I mean, it was just unbelievable. and he changed his walk-up music for the All-Star game.
Yeah, it was, like Mike, and he was asked about that in the presser after. He's like, yeah, I always want to be like Mike. Maybe a little more ironic too, because also another funny Shota story from this year is that he was at Starbucks and they kept getting Shota wrong. They couldn't pronounce it and couldn't say it. So he's like, what's the most generic American name I can think of? And he said Mike. And so he decided to write Mike on his Starbucks, and the players took notice of this. And now the placard in his clubhouse says Mike instead of, well, I think it says Shota Mike Imanaga. So that's his unofficial American nickname here. So I think for that reason, and obviously Michael Jordan's allure, and every player that comes to Chicago always talks about Michael, no matter if they're basketball or another sport. It's always just, even Shota, never having really been to Chicago before this year, obviously knows who Michael Jordan is and what he meant to the city. So pretty cool for him to embrace that and to have that walk-up music for the game on Tuesday.
Yeah, when you think about everything from the number he chose because of Ben Zobrist to Chelsea Dagger as his walkout song, and now this, it just seems like, he's done his homework on Chicago and Chicago culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that showed from the Go Cubs Go press conference, right? Like, I think his persona, just talking to Shota a few times this year, getting to know him, obviously seeing him interact with the players, going back to spring training and talking to his teammates, he has really taken it upon himself to know not only his team but the city. And I remember stories about him, when he was here for an interview with the Cubs back before he signed, spending extra time in Chicago. His agency is here in Chicago, and just going to a Blackhawks game, going to explore the city and getting to just kind of dive deep into what this place would look like if he lived here. And I think that's really special for him to do that and to acclimate himself to the U.S. and to Chicago specifically. And with his players, everybody raves about just how much he is open to talking to them and getting to know them. He spoke specifically about his fellow starting staff, Justin Steele, Kyle Hendricks, James and Tyone, all by name, about how much they've helped him this year, because they'll be in the dugout on days they're not pitching and they'll be just talking during the game. What do you see? What's the approach to this guy? What do you think, the best, approach would be for this situation? So picking the brains of his teammates, being very open to learning. Those are some of the things that we've seen from Shota Imanaga. So it's no surprise. Yes, he's a rookie, 30 years old, 8 years experience in Japan. He has not looked like a rookie this season, a sub-3 ERA and a very deserving all-star.
Now, you talked about his teammate on the WBC when you talk about Shohei Ohtani, also his teammate on the All-Star game. You're there, and it just seems like this guy just is something completely special, Josh, like we've never seen in baseball before. On the biggest stage, the guy hits a 3 home run. It's to me just so phenomenal to watch that experience.
Yeah, it's baseball history. You're seeing in real time one of the best to ever play the game. And I think people have to when watching Shohei Ohtani, because yes, he's not pitching this year because of the surgery on his elbow. Hopefully he's back to form as a pitcher next year, because he's so much fun to watch as a pitcher. But he's now the first player to win an all-star game as a pitcher and to hit a home run in an all-star game. Think about that for a moment. And obviously, Babe Ruth might have done that if the all-star game was a thing when he was still pitching in the late teens, early 20s, obviously more than 100 years ago. But it was interesting because Shohei was up at the plate, and the first 2 pitches were balls. And I literally turned to my buddy next to me sitting, we're like behind home plate all the way up in the press area, and there's auxiliary seating. So we are basically like in the 400 level where the Cubs, where you would sit right by the rail above home plate, same exact seats. And I was like, he's hitting this next pitch out. Literally called it, and boom, 2-0 pitch, and he just destroyed the baseball. And we had a really good sight line of it, really good, beautiful view of the overhead of just his swing. The ball launched to right center, and yeah, he's just so much fun as a baseball fan, because he's the modern Babe Ruth. There's no really other way to say it. And once he gets back to pitching, I hope he's ready to go by that Japanese series next year at the Tokyo Dome, because you're going to have potentially a game with Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto in those 2 games, and then Shota versus one of those guys in the other. And you're going to obviously have Shohei hitting. So it'll just be a fantastic event. In 25 years, to the day that the Cubs were last in Japan facing the Mets. And I remember specifically watching those games. I was on spring break when I was probably 10, 11 years old. I was at Florida where my grandma lived, and I got up at like 5 a.m. to watch because I was like, I have to watch the Cubs. They're playing in Tokyo. And I watched Benny Agbayani hit a grand slam for the Mets in game 2, and the Cubs at least won game 1. So it'll be really fun to watch those games. And yeah, folks will have to get up early, but it's a once every quarter century event, it seems like, for the Cubs to go out there.
Now, when I sit there and I'm taking a look at this here, when we talk about Shohei Ohtani, boy, I just wonder what he would do in a home run derby. But what did you think about the format of the derby this year? Did you like it? Was it a little anticlimactic? Where do you stand on the home run derby?
Yeah, and I think Shohei was in it maybe 2 years ago or last year. I forget which, if he was at the Dodger Stadium one or last year in Seattle. But he has participated before. It would have been fun if Judge was back in it, if he was back in it. Pete Alonso, it's cool that he wants to do it as much as he has, and he's kind of said before, like, it was always his dream to do the home run derby, so why would he ever not do it? And this was his 5th time. He was trying to win a 3rd title like Ken Griffey Jr. Maybe it's time to move on and pass that torch to someone else. I think you could see that maybe some fresh blood would be better. But yeah, I think some of the biggest stars being in the home run derby would have livened it up. The format, I liked the change that they made in the first round, where the top 4, no matter what seeding, like they didn't rank them, 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, the top 4 home run hitters advanced. That was smart. And then you did the bracket style 1v1 to advance to the championship. I didn't mind that. I think maybe going back to a format where you have a specific number of pitches versus the timer. And I know they have both, but I would like to see, hey, you get 20 pitches, maybe 20 swings, whatever it is, and you just try your hardest on those. And because it can get a little, it's 3 minutes. You're just kind of, there's some pauses, some timeouts. You're seeing guys take a few extra pitches. It being in the ballpark, it didn't feel as lively as it probably should have been until the very end when we saw Hernandez go back and forth with Bobby Witt, and that was fun to watch. But a 3-hour event for an 8-man home run derby, it felt it dragged. And it being there, it did. I don't know how it seemed on TV, but it felt like it dragged being there live.
A little bit of a drag. And I wonder if maybe, okay, obviously this isn't the steroid era anymore. Maybe we go with the 6 best home run hitters. Maybe we don't need 8, right? And, and then the top, something, I don't know, top 4 make it or something, but,
or maybe something, I don't know, like, something where, I think about like the NBA, the dunk contest. You have none of the big names anymore that do it. And, for me, it's like, as a fan, I'm not going to really just tune in to watch, Larry Nance Jr. compete in the slam dunk contest. Like, I loved it when Zach LaVine was still doing it. And obviously, years ago when Vince Carter was at the height of his dunking prowess, and then obviously Dominique versus MJ and stuff like that. So I get that it's harder to convince guys to do it when they're stars. But if you can incentivize them some way to make it worth their while, I think it would be incredible if we got Shohei, Aaron Judge. I do think Gunnar Henderson was worthy to be there. He's obviously having an incredible season, so that was worth it. But maybe not the biggest name for the casual baseball fan yet. Or if you had hey, we're gonna bring back like pitchers for their one time to get to hit again, and you get to the top like 8 pitchers. That like what Jake Arrieta was years ago, and get them into like a separate home run derby for pitchers only, something to spice it up and make it a little different. I think that baseball is in need of that, besides for just changing the format like they did this year.
Josh, we're looking at the next possibility for Wrigley Field, which has not hosted since 1990. That you're talking 2027 is the next chance that the Cubs would have, that Wrigley would have to host. What do you think the odds are, and why do you think they keep getting passed up over? And I mean, this is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Yeah. And I've been asking myself that for years. I don't know why they're getting passed up. Other than, so you look at some of the last few franchises that have gotten the All-Star game. So Atlanta was supposed to have it back in 2021. Or actually 2020, but then have an All-Star game, then 2021, and then MLB moved it because of the Georgia election loss. So Coors Field just got it again, kind of out of just, hey, we need someone to host it last minute. Atlanta has a new stadium, so they get one. Texas has a new stadium, so they get one. Philly gets it in 2026 because it's the 250th anniversary of the United States. Okay, fine. You can see why that makes sense. But for it not to be at Wrigley Field, post renovations here, we're going to go on, basically more than a decade after the renovations of Wrigley Field. That always felt like, all right, once that is done and you can accommodate a bigger event at Wrigley Field like that, you would think that it would happen. And I don't know what the holdup is. I don't know if it's something with the politics in the city. Do they want some, I think I had heard or read some reports that maybe security and making sure there's more, they want more from the city to make sure they have more security and more of a police presence. That obviously goes into overtime pay and budgets. And so all that, matters, but we're hosting the DNC here in a month in Chicago. So we are no stranger to these big events. And it is a big event. Don't get me wrong. The All-Star game, there are 400 to 500 media members alone. And then you obviously got all the fans coming in from out of town. So I would love to see it. I think Wrigley is ready to happen, for it to happen again. And yeah, I usually hear about this stuff around this time where they announce the next open date. So 2027, maybe at this point, Crawly, they're going to wait till 2030 and make it the full 40 years, which is crazy, but maybe they want that round number. I don't know, because it's long overdue for Wrigley to get back into the game at the All-Star game.
I just wanted to go to a game before I'm a senior citizen. Josh, thank you so much for jumping on and glad to talk to you without the loudspeaker over. Where can our listeners follow your work?
Let's just say real quick, Crawly, that I hope by the time the Cubs host the All-Star game, they figure out the jerseys, because, man, seeing those up close, especially the American League, whatever that orange-red color and the sand is just, who thought that was a good color scheme? I mean, the blue I didn't mind for the NL, but it was rough looking at the American League jerseys. And even Rob Manfred addressed it after, and he's like, maybe we'll think about going back to what it was pre-COVID, which was wearing the actual team jersey, which I kind of liked, because that, yeah, you don't get to sell an extra jersey, and that's what Fanatics and MLB wants, but at least, that was really cool to see growing up, every player representing their team by wearing their team's jersey for the All-Star game. So anyway, always fun talking to you, especially this week where it's cool to see the All-Stars. Follow me on Twitter, as you mentioned, Josh_Frydman, or X, sorry, whatever you want to call it now. Instagram is Josh Frydman, and same with Facebook. And nightly on GN Sports, our 10:30 to 11 p.m. show. Got an awesome team: Jared Payton, Caitlin Sharkey, Chris Bowden. So I'll be on throughout the weekend, and talking more baseball. We got Bears training camp gearing up, so we're excited.
You're a busy man, Josh. I appreciate you jumping on, and thank you so much.
All right, Crawly. Talk to you soon.
This is season 3, episode 58 of the Fly the W670 podcast. What happens to the Cubs in the second half is what we are talking about. Don't forget to listen, download, review, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. You can email us at flythew670@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can watch us. That's right, on the 670 The Score YouTube page. And if you are watching, you'll see that I am sporting my Salsa King of Chicago t-shirt. I met the Salsa King of Chicago today at the Mully and Haw live studio show at the Blue Cross Blue Shield Performance Stage in the Prudential Building. Nice to meet him. Crawly, I know you know him. If you've been listening, you heard us talking about that in segment 1. So we've got some news and notes, and somebody from the World Series Cubs is joining the media.
Yep. First off, the city council approved the rezoning of 3 properties on Sheffield Avenue, including the old Emus Catulli building and the Torco building. Everyone remembers in the 80s, the big Torco sign on top of the building. And then the Emus Catulli building. Emus Catulli means in Latin, Emus Catulli means let's go Whelps or Cubs. It's the Latin equivalent of let's go Cubs. And they used to have the AC, which stood for Anno Catulli, the year of the Cubs. And they would have the year since the Cubs won the division, the pennant, and the World Series. And remember, that was a big deal.
That was a big deal. Yeah, that people out of town would always ask. And if you knew your stuff, it took me a while to learn exactly what it was, but I did finally learn what that was. And that was always a good a gimmick for any out of towners.
And not only that, I remember when they won the World Series and finally seeing all the O's right across there, man, and just how glorious that felt there. And I remember when they had to add a little bit when they went to 100 years without winning the World Series. So, when we're sitting here and looking at it, in its place will be a 5-story, 29-unit apartment building, 11 parking spaces on the side and the alley, I guess, and then the back, and a rooftop design that will include 2 pickleball courts. So, I mean, it's just hard, Dustin, because it seems like those buildings were a part of our experience growing up. And
right, part of Cubs lore. We just talked about it, right? Yeah.
I'm just not really thrilled right now with this idea, but what are you going to do, man? They got them, apparently they need to make their money, and that's that. You were talking about the 2016 return of 2016 hero Jon Lester. He will be returning to Chicago this week to work for Marquee for the upcoming homestand. And so when you're taking a look at this right here, he's going to be doing some Marquee work on Friday and Saturday. I know he's going to be doing post game, and he'll be in the broadcast booth on Sunday with Pat Hughes and Joe Girardi, and on Monday and Tuesday with Boog and JD. So cool to have Jon Lester back in town, right?
Yeah, that is cool. Got to interview him once down in the Cubs clubhouse with the Mully and Hanley show, I believe, back in the day. And he was a really good dude. I mean, he can talk baseball. When you get him going, when he wants to talk, he's really good. When he doesn't want to talk, he's really ornery, which is what he was out on the mound, right? When he took that ball for you, he went out there with a little disjointedness against whoever he was facing. So I will be curious to hear him. I'm excited for him to hopefully tell some good stories. And I remember it was Jon Lester, right, who paid a bunch of bar tabs all over Chicago on his way out of town. That was pretty cool. Not a big fan of the beer that he was buying everybody, but that's another story.
All I got to say is, Jon Lester, if you're listening to the Fly the W podcast, maybe do an autograph signing while you're in town. There's a couple of us who could use a few pieces. So,
well, maybe you should stand outside the Marquee building. I know where they walk in, Crawly.
Maybe hang out over by the Hotel Zachary. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I got a feeling that would be a tough one.
All right. So a 2016 Cubs World Series heroes coming in at the same time. The Cubs have actually fired somebody.
Yeah, Toy Matsushita.
Or parted company, if they want to be nicer about it.
Yeah, Toy Matsushita will no longer serve as Seiya Suzuki's interpreter with the media anymore. They said we're going in a different direction. This was a scoop by Patrick Mooney of The Athletic. But now they're going to have now Masamoto, who's a Cubs employee who manages their Pacific Rim operations and Major League Video System. And then they're going to use Shota Imanaga's interpreter, Edwin Stanberry, who Josh Frydman, who was on the last segment, was saying what a great interpreter he was. They're going to work with Suzuki, but that was just a weird one, Dustin, kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, I'll be curious for some reporting on that. Always curious what's going on behind the scenes, and if there was some conflict, if things weren't getting delivered the way that the front office or perhaps the skipper wanted them to be.
Well, that's going to be something to be looking into, and something I've been looking into all day since it was released.
This is like Christmas for you, Crawly. I did say before the podcast another dumb thing. I don't know why they released this so early. I mean, let's worry about the second half of the season. And then, like, the NFL makes it into an event. The release. Make it into an event, man.
Well, here we go. It is released, and the Cubs are starting in Japan on March 18th and March 19th to open the season. So start saving those nickels and pennies now, sports fans.
More like hundreds and thousands, nickels and dimes. You don't have enough time, Crawly.
No. Now, the Cubs will be the home team when they are in Japan. But Dustin, like you kind of said, like just the dumbness of the way that some of this schedule works. Now, my guess is that it's not horrible just because, they're gonna go to Japan and they're gonna come back to Mesa before spring training ends. But then they're going to start out in Arizona, which I think kind of works for them. And then they play Oakland. So it's a West Coast trip. Then they take on San Diego and Texas at home. But then, Dustin, they come back to the West Coast to place the Dodgers in San Diego. So why would you start with a West Coast? I mean, might as well just finish the swing.
Well, eventually you gotta let them have a home opener. At least the Dodgers. You're going out to the Dodgers instead of the Dodgers coming here early, which is what happened this year. Hold on a minute. You just mentioned something, and you're a season ticket holder, and I got to get your opinion on this. You said that the 2 games in Japan, the Cubs are the home team. So does that mean there are only 79 games at Wrigley next year?
There are only 79 games at Wrigley next year.
Wow. Now, does that affect the price?
Yes.
You mean,
that'll affect
okay, so you
the-
save a
sorry.
little bit. Do you have the opportunity to buy the tickets in Japan
I don't know.
as a
I'm
season
not sure
ticket
about
holder?
that because this is the last time that they played in Japan was the late 90s. And I didn't become a season ticket holder till like 2000. So they played in Japan
Boy,
beforehand.
79 games at Wrigley. I mean, every game is special. I'm surprised by that. Really
But
surprised.
think about this, Dustin. They're going to be the home team. They're going to be playing Japan first. Then they play in NLA with the second week of the third week of the season, roughly. And then they play the Dodgers at home to end April. After April, you don't see the Dodgers again the rest of the season.
Good.
There's going to be some interesting games to take a look at. And that's what I do like to look at. I do like to kind of play around and be like, hey, where am I thinking about going? What kind of trips would I make? And so right now I'm kind of looking at maybe a potential road trip out to Washington or Philly, one of the two, and then maybe out to Minnesota. I've never been to Target Field. So those are the two I have circled.
Yeah, Minnesota might be kind of fun. I agree. Maybe check out the Mall of America, check out a good steakhouse, something like that.
Yeah, it's not too bad of a ride. I think it would be fun. So I'm just kind of kicking around. They're going to be playing at Yankee Stadium, Toronto, but the dates don't really work for me. But I've always wanted to kind of go to that hotel that they have there in the stadium.
Yeah, that looks cool.
They're going to be in the with Anaheim, Colorado, a couple other city, different towns. But that's the fun thing for me about the schedule. So I'll try to see where I can get to.
All right, so the Cubs are going to open up on Friday, so that's tomorrow. We're recording this on Thursday, and they are going to be taking on the 2024 National League champions. Those are the Diamondbacks from Arizona.
Yes. Now, if you looked here, a couple things have happened on the roster since we last talked. The Cubs acquired Jesus Tinoco during the All-Star break.
Who?
Jesus Tinoco. 3.87 ERA with 37 strikeouts and 11 walks in 28 innings, 21 games at the AAA level for the Rangers and Royals. He played some Major League ball before, but they added him. Good news as Julian Merriweather and Caleb Killian continue their rehab process, pitching for AAA Iowa. Both of these guys who throw above 96 miles per hour are going to be back with the Cubs in the next few weeks, barring any setbacks. So that's that boost to the bullpen that we were talking about. Friend of the pod, Rich Biesterfeld, took some pictures of Mike Talkman. He's on his rehab assignment in the Arizona Complex League. And then hopefully we'll find out, like I said, more about Luke Little's shoulder injury. As far as the D-backs 2024, would you say that they're maybe having a little bit of a World Series hangover?
Right. I've heard that they've been pretty banged up too. I saw Torey Lovello, the skipper, on MLB Network a couple times during the All-Star break, and he was talking about the team getting ready to jump out to a great second half because they've been dealing with a ton of injuries.
And Torey Lovello's son is the manager of the South Bend Cubs, right?
I did not.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I got a chance to talk to him when I went down to South Bend. Always a blast going down there. But he's a good, smart baseball mind there, and I think he's really interesting. I've been watching him in South Bend. Right now, though, the Diamondbacks are in second place in the NL West with a record of 49-48. Like everybody else in the NL, they're all kind of blobbed together. But they're 7 games behind the division-leading Dodgers, 1 game back of the Mets, though, for the third wild card spot. So like Torey Lovello was saying, this is important for them to get off to a good start as well. They got off to a bad start April, 14-17 and 11-15 in May, but they went 16-11 in June and 8-5 in July. So similar to the Cubs in July. The Cubs played the Diamondbacks in Arizona 3 times when the Cubs were doing really good and the Diamondbacks were awful. In game 1, Ben Brown took on Merrill Kelly in a pitcher's duel. The Cubs were trailing 2-1 in the 9th. Nico Horner scored the tying run on a wild pitch. Then he hit a walk-off, not a walk-off, but he hit an RBI single in the 11th that was the game winner. They beat the D-backs 3-2. Game 2, another extra inning affair, Kyle Hendricks versus Tommy Hendry. Neither starting pitcher did well, and the Cubs were down 8-5. They took the lead in the 7th with a 6-run inning, so they were up 11-8, but the bullpen gave up 1 run in the 7th, 1 run in the 8th. They had 11-10 lead in the 9th. Adbert Alzolay blew the save, and then Drew Smiley gave up a run in the 11th. So they gave up a single run from the 7th all the way, except for the 10th inning, 7, 8,
Right.
9, 11 innings. So awful. And then the Cubs took the rubber game. Jordan Wicks and pitched 4 1/3 innings of 2-run ball. And Hayden Wesniewski came in, pitched 4 innings of shutout ball in relief. So they were able to beat the Diamondbacks the first time that they had a chance to have, to face them. But obviously, Dustin, this is a little bit different now. We'll see what happens here.
Little tail of the tape. Yes, the tail of the tape. The tail of the tape.
When we take a look at this, we know that the Cubs batting has not been good, but it's getting slightly better of late. The edge goes here to the D-backs. They're batting 254 as a team, 7th in baseball, while the Cubs are at 235, 22nd. So they're slowly but surely moving up. Slug, the D-backs are 9th with a 410 slug, while the Cubs are 21st, 382. But again, some improvements in all of this. Where we don't see improvements with the Cubs is runners in scoring position. How about this for the Diamondbacks? They're second best in all baseball. They hit 280 with runners in scoring position, while the Cubs are second from last, 28th, 224 with runners in scoring position. That's clearly got to get better if the Cubs want to turn this around.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, it does.
Pitching is concerned. This goes to the Cubs here. They have an ERA, starting pitcher ERA of 367, 9th in baseball. They've been in the top 10 pretty much the whole season, while the Diamondbacks are 27th in baseball with a 4.80 ERA. You talked about injuries to their starting pitching. Relievers, the Cubs are 16th with a 4.01 ERA, while the Diamondbacks are 22nd with a 4.30 ERA. So the relief pitching for the Cubs has jumped up. It was about 23-24 not so long ago, a couple of weeks ago. That's improved, and the defense has improved. Diamondbacks slightly better. They're 11th in baseball with 24 defensive run saves, while the Cubs are 16th, 8th defensive run saves. But Dustin, you've really seen a big improvement in the relievers and the defense. It really now for the Cubs is going to have to come down to hitting with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, hitting with runners in scoring position, always a big deal. No doubt about that.
Now, when we get to the pitching probables for this weekend, game 1 is on Friday at 1:20. Left-handed pitcher Justin Steele versus right-hander Zach Gallen. These are probables. It has not been released, at least when we started this podcast. We know Justin Steele, again, truly the ace of this club, in my opinion. He has a 2-3 record with a 2.71 ERA in 14 games started, with 81 strikeouts and 86 in the third innings pitch. Hamstring injury on the opening night game in Texas knocked him out for a month of April. He really wasn't himself in May. He had a 4.88 ERA in 5 starts. But then, Dustin, he has a 2.13 ERA in 6 starts in June and a 0.56 ERA in July. I thought he should have been selected to the All-Star game as an alternate. That didn't happen. Justin was injured when the Cubs faced the D-backs in April. He's 0-1 lifetime against them with an ERA of 3 in 4 games started. Ketel Marte is 2-11 against Justin. Christian Walker is 1 for 9. But Kevin Newman is 4 for 9 against Steele. Dustin, this team has a whole bunch of annoying Cubs killers on it. I don't like it. Zach Gallen is 6-5 with a 3.87 ERA in 15 games started, 76 strikeouts and 76 and 2/3 innings pitch. Like Justin, Zach had an hamstring injury, so he missed the month of June. He struggled since coming back, just like Justin did. But he had a good start in his first game back on June 29th, but in his last 3 starts, all in the month of May, he has a combined ERA of 9. The Cubs did not see Gallen last time they played each other in April, but Zach is 2-1 against the Cubs with a 3.03 ERA in 5 starts. Ian Happ, 1 for 11 against Gallen. Seiya, 2 for 8, and Dansby is 1 for 8. Zach throws a 4-seamer, a curveball, and a changeup.
All right. Second game of this series, Shota Imanaga going. That one's a night game, a weekend night game. That's unusual, right? On a Saturday.
Yep.
Fox is in town for this one.
Yep, 6:15, Shota Imanaga versus Brandon Pafad. Shota was the Cubs' lone all-star representative after going 8-2 with a 2.97 ERA in 17 games. Started with 98 strikeouts, 97 innings pitched. In those 17 games that he started, there's only been 2 starts where he's given up more than 3 runs and 2 games where he's given up exactly 3 runs. So for the 13 other games that he started, he has given up 2 runs or less. Shota did not face the D-backs in April, and nobody on the team has any bats against him. Brandon Pafat is 4-6 with a 3.97 ERA in 19 games started, with 104 strikeouts and 113 in the third innings. Brandon's pitched well in his last 3 starts before the breaks. He gave up 2 runs and 16 in the third innings pitch against Oakland, the Padres, and the Braves. He pitched against the Cubs on April 17th and was the hard luck loser. He went 7 innings, gave up 3 runs, but only 2 of them earned. Fod is 1-1 in 3 games lifetime with the 2.95 ERA versus the Cubs. 2 of those 3 games were starts. Dansby Swanson, 4 for 8 against Brandon. Nico, 2 for 9. Morel, 2 for 8. And Ian Happ, 0 for 8. Brandon features a 4-seamer, sweeper, sinker, and a changeup.
All right, game number 3, Jamison Tyone, who has put together a bunch of quality starts going up against a lefty in Jordan Montgomery. This, of course, will be the normal Sunday 120 start.
Yes, Tyone is 7-4, 3.10 ERA in 16 games started, 75 strikeouts and 93 innings pitched. He's been a pleasant surprise for the Cubs this season. He's kept the Cubs in nearly every game he's pitched, giving up more than 3 runs only once in 16 starts. That was against the White Sox of all teams. JMO's not pitched against the D-backs this year, but he has a 1-1 with an ERA, 3.50 ERA and 3 starts against the Snakes. Eugenio Suarez, 7 for 32 against Tyone. Lourdes Gurriel, 1 for 18. Ketel Marte is 2 for 10. While Jordan Montgomery is 6-5 with a 6.44 ERA and 13 games started, 45 strikeouts and 65 2/3 innings pitched. Montgomery was one of those Boris holdouts, and he's really struggled this season. He didn't get his first start until late April. In May, his ERA was 7.18. In June, his ERA was 7.59. And then he went on the IL with right knee inflammation and hasn't pitched since June 27th. So it's believed he's going to be getting the start, but the Cubs have not faced Montgomery this season. He's 4-3 in 7 games against the Cubs lifetime with a 3.15 ERA. Dansby's 4 for 16 against Jordan. Ian and Nico are 2 for 16 and Sayas 5 for 14. Jordan features a sinker, curveball, and changeup, and a 4-seam fastball.
All right, the hot and not list, and somebody has moved from the hot to the not. But let's talk hot, and somebody also has moved from the not to the hot. So one of the guys we talked about earlier, the DH, Christopher Morel, is on this hot list.
Yeah, when you take a look at Christopher Morel, he had a good series towards the end here. He was 5 for 17, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs. He had 2 in 1 game. So he's slashing 294, 706. Nico Horner, 6 for his last 17 with 3 RBIs. And you have Seiya Suzuki, 6 for 17 with 1 home run, 3 RBIs. He's slashing 353, 529. When we look at the not, Dansby Swanson still on there, but he's not doing that bad, 4 for 14. But Michael Busch is someone that's been looking really, really good. But he's been struggling lately. He's 3 for his last 19 with no home runs, no RBIs, 6 strikeouts and no walks. He's slashing 158, 211. So I'm hoping the All-Star break gave him a little time to clear his head.
Yeah, let's hope so. That I was kind of liking the way that things were heading for Dansby Swanson. They're going to need him in the second half if they hope to get to where they want to go. So the D-backs are in town, and who do Cub fans need to watch out for?
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of Cubs killers on this team. Eugenio Suarez, and you got Randall Grichuk, Jock Peterson, and Kevin Newman, all guys that just are paying for the Cubs. But look out for Ketel Marte, 9. He's 5 for his last 9 with a home run, 5 RBIs, slashing 556, 667, 889. Can't get much hotter than that. Eugenio Suarez, 4 for his last 11 with the home run and 4 RBIs. Christian Walker, also 4 for his 11, but no home runs, no RBIs. We talked about some guys that give the Cubs some trouble in the past. Lourdes Gurriel's 2 for his last 10 with 1 RBI. Kevin Newman, 1 for his last 7. And Geraldo Perdomo is 1 for his last 9.
All right, here we go. Prediction time. Second half of the season, per se. I'll go first. The way this pitching lines up, and again, this is a big part of why I'm going to say what I'm going to say, plus the Cubs need it, plus these games are at home. The Cubs must and will take 2 of 3. I don't know which one they're going to lose, but the Cubs will take 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks. Otherwise, Crawly, they are going to be limping into a series against the Brewers, and these games coming up that we'll preview next time are the last 3 games in July that they're going to face the Brewers.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. I agree with you 2 for 3. I think they're going to win the Steele start, and I think they're going to win the Tyone start.
Oh, they lose the Shota game. Okay.
I think they're going to lose the Shota game because of bullpen. Right. Not because of Shota. I think it's going to be another close game. Brandon Pafat, for whatever reason, seems to have the Cubs number. So that's the one that has me the most nervous there.
All right. Well, Crawly and everybody else, that's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow on all the socials. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We are on Twitter. You can email us. That's right. flythew670@gmail.com. And you can reach us by watching and subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, enjoy the weekend. I know you got some family in town. Hope you guys have a blast. And we'll be back Sunday, Monday to preview the Brewers.
Yeah, hopefully everyone can get back to Wrigley Field. The Cubs can continue their winning ways. Beautiful weather. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!